Good morning, Tallahassee. It's time to wake up Warchant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi and Corey Clark.
What's going on, everybody? Let's go ahead and do a radio show. It's Wake Up Warchant right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. I'm Aslan. Irish Schofel joining me here on Wake Up Warchant, brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. And there are three great locations over in the College Town District, Madison Social, Central, and Township. I forgot my fancy schmancy headphones, so I have to use the ones that are here in the studio, and it gives you a different sort of timbre, different sort of sound, Ira. So I'm out of sorts right now, man. We're going to need you to carry the way today.
So those are your personal headphones you usually bring?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a pro's pro. You're the guy that shows up at the billiard hall with the his own cue?
The guy that shows up at the bowling alley with his own bowling ball and glove?
Right?
Freaking A, right?
All
It's
right.
me. No, I never.
So what kind of case do you have your headphones in?
Well, no. So I spoiled myself back a few years back, and I bought a set of those noise-canceling Bose headphones.
Nice.
But the thing is now all these devices don't have headphone jacks. So they're rendered pretty much obsolete, but thankfully here at a radio station, wired technology is still, king of the day. So I'm like, oh, shoot, I might as well get some use out of them and just use them when I work here. So
that is one of my favorite things, man. Like the quality headphones. Oh, yeah. It really is one of my, especially when you got kids. Yeah. And you try to get some work done.
That noise canceling stuff's no joke, man.
It's the real deal.
I gave them to my mom though when she did a transcontinental flight, and she got sick. Like for some reason, the noise
equilibrium or something.
I guess she was like, I don't like these. I'm like, sorry, Mom, I was trying to help you out. So don't buy your mom's noise canceling headsets, guys and gals, for Mother's Day coming up here. So. Last night, let's get to it, I guess. The Noles, 8-4 winners over Jacksonville.
10-4?
10-4. That's right. Yeah, they wanted the free chicken. They got their free chicken. 8th inning, I think. Yeah, Cal Raleigh had a double, and then I think Bornegal followed suit with another RBI. So the Noles rolling, man. I guess, season sweep over Jacksonville. Congrats, good stuff. The things that were of note, I thought, coming out of the press conference last night was 11 mentioned that J.C. Flowers will likely integrate himself back into the lineup or not in the lineup, but he'll get some action this weekend. Flowers suffered that concussion.
You almost feel like I almost forgot about him. It's been a long time.
J.C. Flowers.
When it first happened, it was like, it'll be a little. I mean, I don't think anybody realized it was going to be. I mean, it's got to be 6 weeks or something, right?
It was like 6 to 8 weeks. I feel like it's closer to 8 weeks than the 6 week sort of timeline. I guess 11 said that actually on Wednesday afternoon, Flowers finally got the wires removed from his jaw. So he's had his jaw wired shut because of the whole injury.
We didn't see it, did we? Was it on the road? Or was it?
I wasn't there.
I definitely didn't see it. I remember, and I heard about it, but I didn't realize at the time it was that serious. But man, oof.
Yeah, so he's like, I wanted to put him out there at some point in the evening, but just felt that, he's been eating applesauce, so maybe give him a day or so to kind of power himself up. And then I asked him about Will Zierzow, and he wasn't as sort of firm in his statement, but he sounded pretty optimistic that Zierzow is going to make a season debut at some point this weekend as well. So that sort of up and down bullpen at least gets another chip to put on the table to see if they can hit something there. So
Cole Sands came out of his appearance over the weekend apparently pretty well because he's going to throw again this weekend.
Yeah, he'll be the fourth person in the rotation. He'll be Parrish, Karp, CJ Van Eyck, and then Cole Sands will pitch on Sunday. So, yeah, what is it, a 4-game set? But they're doing a doubleheader on Saturday, I think it is.
One of the days, yeah. Have you watched Van Eyck pitch much lately?
Yes.
Did you watch him against
yes, Clemson, yeah.
The thing I like about him, well, first of all, his stuff is really good. But the other thing is there's a couple, he did it at home in his last appearance, and they did it in the Clemson game. When he has a third strikeout to end an inning, especially if it's looking, he kind of does this little shimmy thing. Yeah. Like when he's coming off the mound, like that dude, like he knows he's good. Like
he breaks a lot of unwritten rules in baseball that I like. Exactly. I like it. I approve of it. Keep it up, CJ.
Those are the guys you like.
Yeah. So that's cool. I mean, if that's a guy that can emerge right now, I think obviously, Corey and I have talked about it. I think we really, and I'm not even saying so much Corey and I, but I think most fans really kind of glossed over Tyler Holton. They'll figure it out. But no, I mean, it's tough when you lose a guy that sort of caliber. But if CJ can, work himself into something of substance and consistency and reliability, I feel good. I think Drew Parrish is the man. I mean, I feel really confident about Drew Parrish. I think Andrew Karp will be good. And then I think Cole Sands like your fourth guy, a long relief sort of guy. I mean, one of these guys can't make it out of a regional game, struggles in the first few innings. You bring in Cole Sands to kind of maybe calm things down, although he usually historically struggles in his first inning out there. I think they can piece it together and be all right. I'm more worried about the way this team is batting lately. They actually batted in some runs the other night, but against Clemson, it was a lot of errors, a lot of pass balls. They're not hitting the ball around the park enough, to my liking at least.
No, I mean, I know what you're saying, but at the same time, you listen to the post-game interview. We talk about this a lot. Like we focus so much on the team we cover, which is Florida State and their warts. And I thought listening to the post-game interviews after the last Clemson game, the kid that had the walk-off to beat Florida State
Jordan Green, I think.
Yeah, in the final game. He was just like, look, man, this was a hard series. He's like, this was the toughest series we had all year. That team put more pressure on us than anybody else did all year. So it's, I think, good for Florida State fans to hear that. No, this team isn't perfect. It's not what you thought it was going to be. But if they played the way they did in that series, they're going to be a tough out. Yeah. Before you get to supers anyway.
Let's be honest. The first 5 in that batting order now, got to feel pretty good about it. I mean, I still think, I don't know, I expected more out of Red Apple, and I expected more out of, I didn't expect this out of Cal Raleigh, so I guess that kind of offsets a lot of it, but I expected more out of Red Apple and Drew Mendoza thus far. Stephen Wells, though, has been a bit of a, I don't want to say revelation, but he's been coming on strong lately.
He's
so
totally, I've been blown away by him. First of all, defensively, he's a really nice player. That arm is ridiculous.
I love when somebody tagged on him in Clemson. I'm like, good luck with that, you idiot. And he totally gunned him out. I was like, eat it.
His arm is. I mean, Jameis had a great arm from right field, but this. I mean, they've had several guys with that kind of arm, but his is. I mean, it's a different level.
I wonder if they could throw him out there to get 3 outs, or get 2 outs at some point.
When he first came here, he was a pitcher position player.
Yeah,
and that just kind of went away. But yeah, no, I think I'm almost positive he came in as a 2-way guy. And then he
from Key West.
Yeah.
Key West.
And then he's really come on with the bat. I mean, I never expected that at all.
Yeah. So I mean, the first 5, it's pretty set in stone now. It goes Wells. I mean, Jackson Luke really hasn't set the world on fire. I think there was a lot of expectations on him coming to the season. He's been up and down. But you have Luke, and then it follows with Apple, and then you go Raleigh, Mendoza. All in all, that's strong. You feel good about that. But then after that, it's not I don't want to say a drop off, but then I guess that's what
college baseball.
Yeah, right. Everybody else is going to have their question marks.
But the one thing I would say about Luke and Applin and Mendoza is that they are dangerous enough that they'll mess with teams pitching. I mean, you can't just groove fastballs against those guys.
Right.
I mean, there are. I mean, Mendoza. I mean, his bat speed is unbelievable. When he gets a hold of something, he's as powerful a hitter as I've seen here for a long time. We know Luke can get hot if he does. He's a huge difference maker. And then Applin's the one that he was really hot for the first half of last year until he got hurt. We had never seen him put together. He hasn't been here long enough for us to see him, or been healthy enough for us to see him put together like a full season where you say, okay, we know what that guy is. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he's not a guy that can sustain it over the course of a season. Maybe he is. But those other 2 guys, I mean, they put fear, I think, into pitchers. They have to be smart about how they pitch those guys. And if they get hot, I mean, Luke and Mendoza are 2 of the best hitters in college baseball when they're right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a very valid point too, though. It's such a grind of a season. You would just think that. I have faith that Cal Raleigh will get it figured. He's going to keep it rolling. I would think that Drew and Jackson Luke will get dialed in once these things start, really the stakes kind of start raising themselves. 11 said after the game that he's been very pleased. He kind of gushed about the leadership from Cal, and I asked Cal, what his thoughts on that. Is just one of those things where he's tried to stay steady all year longer? Does he feel urgency since it's May? And he's right at the gates, like it's go time now. I mean, he literally said it's go time. We know that this is the time when it matters most, and if we want to get to where we got to go, we got to start getting better.
And right before the walk off by Clemson, Mendoza got robbed on that. Wasn't Mendoza that got robbed?
Yeah, he gave it a ride.
And it was funny when he came up. I was telling my daughter, she's not a huge baseball fan by any stretch, but she was sitting there watching it with me, and I said, "Watch this guy." I was just like, "Watch this guy hit." And even though he hasn't been what Mendoza could be, he's so powerful a hitter. And sure enough, man, he crushed that. And I go, well, they just took the lead. And then here comes that dude flying out of nowhere and catches it. And I was like, what?
Yeah, it's tough, man. But again, I think ultimately when the rubber hits the road here, I mean, golly, dude, they've got this crazy set against Mount St. Mary's where you had doubleheader Saturday, So it's Friday, doubleheader Saturday, and then noon game on Mom's Day on Sunday. And then it's NC State at home, and then it's postseason. Then it's ACC tournament. So you just hope that guys like Luke and Mendoza can kind of live up to the lofty expectations we've kind of put upon them.
One thing that happens, and we usually don't talk about it till after it happens, but one thing I've seen, I'm not going to say every year that I've been here, but for the most part, when Florida State, for whatever reason, when they get done finals, and they focus on baseball, they usually take a big jump. Now, maybe all teams do, but usually I can't remember how many times. It seems like almost every year this team plays its best right after finals, going to the ACC tournament, going into a regional. You just see them fix a lot of the things. Guys start getting hot. And again, I'm not saying it's wishful thinking for Florida State fans. I just think it's historically this has been the time where they really do get hot.
Yeah, and again, and there's talented guys that just maybe haven't been producing at the level that I would expect. And again, this is a time of the year where they can kind of batten the hatches down and focus on these things. This is low key, as the kids would say. This is low key my favorite time of the year in Tallahassee. Summer. It's like, so most of the people have gone out of town, the students, but there's the hardcore that still stick around here. I remember when I went to UCF straight out of college, or straight out of high school for 1 year.
Straight out of Compton.
Yeah, straight out of Compton, right? I remember so as soon as summer came, you're like, I just want to go home. But then when I came up to Tallahassee, I remember a couple of my buddies were going to take summer C course. They're like, we're going to stay up or summer being like, we're going to stay up in Tallahassee. I'm like, all right, well, I'll hang around then. I love this time of year. I mean, it's a little more quiet, but and baseball really does sort of take over. And I remember this is the time that I actually go catch a bunch of games when me and my buddies were attending classes. So yeah, this is that time of year, man. It's May, dude. It's time to get geared up. So Florida State again, winners over Jacksonville 10-4. They'll be back at Hauser. I mean, they're at Hauser the rest of the month practically. It feels like they'll be hosting Mount St. Mary's for this 4-game set, and then on next weekend, it'll be NC State coming to town. And what day was it? They're going to do the whole – is it the Sunday game or the Saturday finale? They're going to do the tribute to 11?
I think it's Saturday, but you have to look it up.
I'll check it out. I'll check it out during the commercial break. I've been really busy, Ira, with something that is just so darn tedious, but it led me to a couple questions I want to ask you after the break. We're going to talk football right here on Wake Up Warchant. It's 97.9 ESPN Radio. We'll be right back after this.
Warchant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. Warchant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WARCHANT30. Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
I'm Aslan, Director of Digital Media for Warchant.com, usually joined by Corey Clark, a.k.a. The Coracle, our senior writer and columnist. But I do a really bad job of this, Ira. I don't say the fact that the reason that you're here is because Corey is battling strep throat right now. Have you heard from the Coracle at all?
A little texting. He seemed to kind of upbeat in some text. Okay. I don't know if you can really feel how someone's doing medically.
Well, you're good at reading body language.
Sidelines.
Maybe you can pull it off the text as well.
No, he had a sense of humor. He had a sense of humor about him, which is a good sign when you're sick. Yeah. To still have your sense of humor.
That charming quality of his is ever enduring.
We were jointly making fun of somebody on via text.
Somebody that I know?
Yeah, but no. Actually, I don't think you do. It's somebody who used to be around the FSU program, but is no longer here.
Okay.
And so we were just having some fun at their expense, and he was partaking in that. So I feel like he's got to be doing okay.
Yeah, he was also healthy enough to tweet out that yesterday was Marshall McDougal Day.
That's right, he did. If he's on Twitter, he's got to be feeling pretty good.
6 home runs. My goodness. Bring the bats back, please.
Bring the bats back. And I know Maryland's apparently plays in like a Cracker Jack box, but still, that's unbelievable. I mean, that's just nuts. And the craziest thing is the fact they kept pitching to him. It's like, dude, you're not. If I'm coaching in Pee Wee League, if I'm coaching in 11, 12-year-olds, and a kid's hit 3 bombs on me, no, you're not.
I'll give it a
swinging
fourth.
The bat again.
I'll give it a fourth. But after the fourth,
6?
No way. Yeah. Marshall McDougal, by the way, kids, hit 6 home runs in one game against Maryland back in the day. And not too far back in the day, 20 years ago, maybe less. I don't even know. Was it 90-something?
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark.
Oh, what was I supposed to look up during the commercial break? And I didn't look up the Mike Martin appreciation thing. I'll do that after I ask you this sort of question, Ira. So check it out. I spent a large chunk of my Wednesday doing the tedious work of archiving video. So, golly, we had the first 2 practices were open pretty much the entire time. So that was about 2 hours and I'm rolling and I'm recording on every single minute of spring football. So I got about 2 hours of that. And then another subsequent 13 practices of about 20 minutes. And every single second I'm filming, I'm recording a coach, a player, everything.
So how are you, but you're not archiving it like by the player or coach,
Yes, I am.
Are you really?
Kind of. I broke it down. So I have, it's weird the way editing software works. But anyhow, so I have I'm making one video of just simply Willie Taggart shots, one video of quarterbacks and receivers, another video of defensive linemen, then one of offensive linemen. So I'm making about 10 different videos so that when you guys do the War Chant report with Jeff Cameron and Gene Williams, our founder administrator, that if you guys talk about, DeCalen Brooks, I can't run DeCalen Brooks tackling somebody on ESPN because not ESPN, but other people will come at us. So I just want to have some video of like DeCalen Brooks making a play, and I'll have it from spring football. And I'll be like, I'll go to my linebacker video, and I'll scrub through, and I'll find out, there we go, there's a clip of him, and then I'll put it over the video of you guys talking.
You really got to get this War Chant internship program going, Aslan.
Oh,
it's on you.
Right,
got to get some interns in here.
All right, it is Saturday, 1 p.m.
Big celebration.
Dick Hauser, Mike
show
Martin,
all the videos. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a big day. All the stuff they had planned, I guess, for if he had broken against Miami.
Yeah.
But then he broke it against Clemson. So
fans are encouraged to arrive at the stadium and in their seats 30 minutes prior to first pitch. And then on Friday, they're actually going to that series, not this Friday, but the following Friday, they're going to have 1,000 Mike Martin bobbleheads.
Nice.
Why not give out 1,976 bobbleheads?
Because it costs about 97% more.
Look at you, math major. Okay, so as I'm meticulously archiving all this video, there's a couple things that kind of catch my eye. I'm not totally done with it yet, but I wanted to ask you this. So if you had to, put all your chips on one player that you just for sure, absolutely 110% is going to start Monday night, Labor Day, in Doak Campbell Stadium against Virginia Tech, who would it be? I mean, there's one answer that's obvious.
In any position?
Any position. Well, don't do me specialist. Don't cheat.
No, but
that
I mean,
way.
Offense, defense.
Yes. Let's start at 22.
Brian Burns.
I would say DeMarcus Christmas. That's probably a fair one too, though. Burns and Christmas.
Those two probably.
Those two guys, right? I'm going to go kind of outside the box. I'm going to say Derek Kelly. I think there's
just because of the versatility.
There's
somewhere.
Because he's one of the guys I was going back and looking through all the video, going through all the Oklahoma drills, because it's one of those things where you're lost in the forest and you don't see the trees or whatever.
He did well in the Oklahoma drills?
Yeah, and it was against like some of the more dog guys on the defensive line, and just like the way on a couple of the blocks that he made, just the way Blackman and the rest of the offense responded to him. Because if you win, if it's a stalemate, everybody gets a nice smack on the helmet, like good try, good job. The coaches come around. Like if you win your one-on-one in Oklahoma's, everybody on your side of the ball goes nuts. And like when Derek Kelly won his few battles, people started going crazy for him.
Because they were going up against good competition.
Yes.
Like if you just bury some third team walk on or whatever, nobody's going crazy.
I'm trying. There's one. I think it was Keith Gavin just ate some defensive back's lunch, and I was like, "Come on, you're supposed to, Keith. You got 30 pounds on
exactly.
him, man."
No, that was one of the. I think like the first or second day he did that. I think it might have been the first day. It was the first day we were out there, and it was like AJ Westbrook or something. But yeah, he's got like 30, 40 pounds on that guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
good.
It's still impressive.
Good segue though. It's still impressive, but like be a little humble. Let's be hashtag humble. Listen to Lamar Kendrick's album there, Keith. But to that sort of point, I mean, I was a little bit concerned because I'm like, I don't have a lot of Stanford Samuels. I don't have maybe like 2 clips of him. I hope Nasir Upshur either becomes an All-American or transfers, because I have enough content of him to like last for years. I've got like 5 minutes, I feel like, of just nothing but Nasir Upshur putting people on their back, catching pass after pass. Ultimately, I don't know what his fate is going to be, but I've got a lot of him. But the one, I'm going through all these guys. I'm like, all right, I got some Marvin Wilson. I got some, Wally and May. I got Burns. I got Christmas. I got, Adonis Thomas. I got Dontavius Jack. I got all the linebackers. I got Cyrus Fagan. I got Hamza. I got all, I don't have anything from AJ Westbrook. I mean, I'm rolling every single minute of every single practice. But I shouldn't say, of what's available to the media, which is 20 minutes for some of these. They give us 10 periods, and there's 3 minutes a pop, so about a half an hour of it. And listen, they're running back and forth between certain things, and I'm not saying bury the kid or anything, but that was the thing when I'm going through and I'm kind of making this mental checklist in my head. I'm like, do I have this guy? Do I have this guy? Do I have this guy? And I'm like, dang, I don't have any of AJ Westbrook, which made me sort of go back to as I'm just jumping all over the place right here, it's 97.9 ESPN Radio here in Tallahassee. It's Wake Up Warchant. He's Ira Maslon. Is that kind of to piggyback off, Corey's story or column that he had the other week about that 2015 class being the real sort of stinker that kind of maybe put things in motion for this season of last year deteriorating. I really feel more than anything, Florida State has just really whiffed on defensive backs. Like defensive back is that one position I feel like where that was. We'll see if this new breed can kind of pick everything up. But in terms of, I don't want to call Derwin a miss, but Derwin's health obviously was an issue for one season, and we don't know if we got the best out of him in 2017. McFadden obviously underperformed. Marcus Lewis left the program having done nothing, and then you got a guy like AJ Westbrook who's on his last.
Compared to Calvin Bruton, who Calvin Bruton hasn't really played much at all. He's a senior. AJ Westbrook at least has played, but no, he hasn't been
a difference maker.
Yeah, no, by any stretch. He's kind of been a placeholder when he's been in there. He hasn't made a whole lot of big plays. And then, you look at some of the other guys. Carlos Becker has been injured, hasn't been super productive. He's a guy that was, is a freak athletically. Last year, I think he was a freshman or sophomore last year when he went and he basically just showed up for track and finished in the top 10 nationally. He became an All-American in the, is it the long jump? I think in the long jump. And, freak athletically, but just it has not translated to the field. And Kyle Myers obviously has played a lot, but has not, he's had some rough patches at nickelback. So, and what's interesting about that is defensive back was like the big defensive back and defensive line were the two big priorities under Jimbo. The defense since Pruitt. Yep. After Mark Stoops left, and they went to it's almost like a 4-2-5. They played nickel almost all the time or dime. Sometimes they had 7 defensive backs out there. So they really recruited heavily at defensive back, and they wanted all those guys that could play corner or safety. And I think you're right. The percentages are probably not great in terms of impact players at that position.
When you think about
although I do like Levante Taylor and Stanford Samuels.
Yes.
And I like Hamza Nasruddin and Cyrus Fagan.
And they're the new breed. They're the guy
that foursome is probably going to be your nucleus.
I would say that transitional phase between, that great insight you gave us yesterday about, Antonor Wilson and Antonor Wilson, I'm talking about Antonor Winston, and then Mario Edwards Sr. The fact that they helped get guys like PJ Williams and Ronald Darby here, like that's we keep talking about linebacker plays been slipping, but man, when you got Timmy Jernigan and now Lawrence Stample doing a good job stopping the run, you got Mario Edwards coming off the edge or holding the edge or setting the edge, whatever the hell they want to do with guys these days on the edge, and then those guys on the backside, like your defense is going to be pretty damn good. And I feel like we talk about the strength of this defense of that front four. If that back end can get somewhere closer to what 2012 was rather than what it's been, because when PJ and Darby left, yeah, you had Jalen to hang your hat on, but, like Marcus Bruce was out there, and he did an admirable job. You had Nate Andrews trying to stay healthy. Javian Elliott, a guy that was a walk-on, and, came from TCC. He's hung around in the league right now, I think, so good for him. But it's just, I feel like that's the one glaring thing that, people want to talk about, all the things and the problems on the offensive side of the ball. But defensively, if Stanford Samuels and Hamza and Levante Taylor can live up to their promise, I think that more than anything will be the biggest thing responsible for a turnaround of any sorts this coming season.
No, that's a good point, man. I really do. I think it's fascinating that they did miss. I'm going to say they're all misses, but they did not hit enough at that defensive back position because that was the big priority in that scheme. What's interesting is I do think these young defensive backs. What were you going to say?
No, I was just saying, like Marcus Lewis. I remember seeing practice updates going into 16. Like this guy was the dude, and then
in spring football,
he's gone.
In that spring, he had a really good spring, and he was great in the spring game. Like he kept going at there was a receiver he kept going at, and like it was like, dude, he's nasty, and he had like an edge to him.
I haven't used any of my mind to store information from spring football games that before I arrived here. Like this spring game, I don't remember the one.
It was the spring in Orlando. Okay. He just really had. He had a good spring overall, and then he really played well in that spring game.
Bobo, Kermit, who's he picking on? Kermit and Bobo? Is that what he's doing? Made his name picking on those guys?
It might have been Rudolph. But anyway, I think it was Rudolph. I think he shut him down. So maybe we were grading on maybe we were wrong about the standard there, but anyway, he and then just did not, and that he just did not materialize. But anyway, what's also interesting is that the change in say, focus or emphasis on this defense, because the last few years they really marginalized the linebackers. They just was not
a good way. That's the diplomatic way of putting it. Yeah.
They did. I mean, they almost became bodies out there. And this crew is going to be there's going to be a little bit more emphasis on linebackers. And what's funny is the nomenclature, which I like,
strong word, and I like that.
The fact that they had a star in that defense, the star position that they had under Pruitt, and then I guess it comes from Saban, but Pruitt and Charles Kelly used it. There's a star position in Harlan Barnett's defense too, but it's a different position. Instead of like under the Alabama scheme, it's like a combo corner safety, and in this scheme, it's more like a combo linebacker safety, outside linebacker safety. So it's going to be a little bit bigger guy that like DeKalen Brooks or somebody like that's going to be playing that position. And I think it's good because it gives you a little bit more. I felt like they were a little bit, I don't say weak,
light
up front.
in the waist.
They were a little bit light up front.
Yeah.
Playing that because they would never play Jacob Pugh. It was always a fifth defensive back, sometimes six defensive backs. So I think the scheme's going to be a little bit better, and I do think those young defensive backs are really good. Now, those guys don't have a ton of experience, though. Like Hamsett came on late last year. Cyrus Fagan played some when he got healthy last year. Stanford Samuels played a lot last year, like towards the end of the second half of last season. But Levante Taylor is the only one of that crew that's played like every game for a season.
Yeah.
So there's some uncertainty there, but I like the talent. I mean, Nasruddin. I mean, that kid looks like he looks like a DB you see at Alabama or somewhere like that.
He just looks like a linebacker you'd see at Alabama. His body type is ridiculous, and the way he moves is very intrigued to see how he works up. But that's the one thing I feel like if the defensive backs can get coached up, and again, I mean, not to pile on, but the finger kept getting pointed at the one guy on the defensive side of the ball, and that was his responsibility too, if I'm not mistaken. Right? That was Charles Kelly's, sort of, his secondary role. So if they can figure out things on the back, and I think that obviously strengthens everything for him. I know the game won the trenches and all that kind of stuff, but I think the front four will be good enough, and if that back end can just live up to their promise, I think that'll be the biggest reason for the improvement that we're all bracing for in the 2018 season.
Real quick on that topic, and because I wrote about this a couple of months ago, but
keep it rolling, man. It's May. I'm not going to cut you off. We're talking football. Keep it going.
Well, I wrote about this a couple of months ago, but I certainly never talked about it on the air on this show or any other.
Oh, bring it! Another exclusive.
No, it's just some insight from Bryant McFadden,
okay.
And I wrote it when towards the end of Kelly's tenure, I think, or it might have been right after Kelly and that staff was let go, but. What Bryant McFadden said, because he came here last spring and spent like a week. He basically offered Charles Kelly. He said, "Hey, I'll be in town. I can come and just hang out and watch what you do. I played for Dick LeBeau. I've been around some really great defensive minds. I can offer some insights. I can talk to you."
Played with Troy Polamalu. And
I mean, I've seen some good stuff. Yeah. I've got a couple rings. So he did. He stayed for a week, and one of his two big takeaways, I think, from that side of the ball was, one, he felt like there was way too much on Charles Kelly. And the point he made was, you look at that defense, you got Odell, because of the way they marginalized the linebackers, and they put so much on the DBs. They're playing 5 or 6 DBs at a time, and you got one guy coaching them. Odell's coaching 2 guys. The defensive ends coach is coaching 2 guys. Yeah. The linebackers coach is coaching 2 guys. But Charles Kelly's got like half the defense by himself. I mean, so what kind of attention to detail can he do? And then on top of that, Bryant said, watch, and he liked Charles Kelly. He didn't feel like the technique coaching was where it needed to be.
I think we can all agree on that. I don't think Miami's complaining about the technique at all about that. You mentioned Travis Rudolph. There's a weird sort of hot, half-baked theory I had about him that tied into what happened a few weeks ago in the NFL draft I wanted to talk about. Irish Raffel joining myself here on Wake Up Warchant. It's 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee. We'll be right back after this.
You're locked in to Wake Up Warchant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Welcome on back to the program. It's Wake Up Warchant, 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee. I'm Aslan. He's Irish Raffel filling in for Corey Clark. Corey battling strep throat. Fingers crossed, big guy. Hopefully he'll be back in the saddle. Corey, take it easy. I know you're probably listening. Be a little bit nervous. Don't get Wally pipped by Ira. But take care of yourself first.
There are 2 things that I am 100% convinced of. Number 1, he ain't listening. And number 2, he's not concerned at all about getting Wally pipped The Coracle knows his standing.
Nary a care in the world, Corey.
No.
Just floating through this thing called life and just making it happen, and just everything is always aces for him. Always flush, man. So, Ira, this one thing I want to talk about with, you mentioned Travis Rudolph, and this is sort of, again, like I said, a half-baked theory I had on the NFL draft, and Travis Rudolph kind of factored in a little bit. There was I actually went into our radio email. There's so many different avenues people have to contact us. It's cool, but it's also, I just wish it was streamlined. Like we have, people leave comments on the YouTube page, on the iTunes page. They tweet at me, they tweet at Corey, they tweet
Tribal
at Up Warchant.
Council. You got the private messages on the
and then people also email these different email accounts that we have. And anyhow, I was tapping into it. Hopefully we're going to have a couple people actually call in and leave some messages for the Renegade Express, which if you haven't left your questions yet on the Tribal Council, go ahead and hop on there, leave a question or a comment. Myself and Ira will get to it on Friday's program of the show. The draft actually got a lot of feedback from people. We got a couple columns out of Corey about it that I thought were really kind of good and eye-opening. And, we keep talking about what kind of information were these kids getting in the process, right? The NFL's got their draft advisory board, but who's on it? What are they getting back? Is it, how specific is it? I wonder how much of things work out to, I think ultimately you have kids who have been told they're so great and they've done some good things on the field that they start believing their own sort of hype, I guess you want to say. But my thing is, for example, let's use Tavares McFadden as an example. He's a guy who played with Jalen Ramsey, and I'm sure part of him, I don't want to call it arrogance, but just the competitor in you. That's what we call it, right? The confidence that kids have these days, it's the competitor in them. You played alongside of him. You saw him practice, and you're like, man, he's good. I'm as good as I think, and I'm not saying that this is what Tavares McFadden's thing, but I'm wondering how much of these guys, how much of that sort of starts getting in their head because then they see how well he's doing. A guy like Auden Tate thinks, like, man, like I know Travis left early, but he left early. He still got drafted, and he didn't get drafted. He made it on a roster. He's doing okay. Bobo didn't get drafted. Look at Bobo. Bobo just catching touchdowns from Jameis in the league. I played with these guys. I'm 4 inches taller than him. And I got better hands than him. I'm just kind of going through an inner monologue. I wonder how much of is them pushing aside what their parents are telling them or what their advisors or the paperwork, and it's just, listen, I played alongside guys that I hear getting hyped every day. I played alongside these guys. I'm just as good as them, so I'm gonna go, and I don't care what people are telling me. I think it's going to work out. Like, do you think that would factor in, or would you hope that they just would focus on what mom and dad or the agent's telling them?
I think every situation is unique. Obviously, every situation is different. Sometimes it is, family, pressures. Sometimes it's pressures from just different girlfriends or different things. I mean, and we've seen it from the on the basketball side, the guys like Bacon and some of those guys who had pressure from family members and people like that to go pro. Back to Solomon Alabi and all the, there's been so many different cases, and certainly on the football side. But I do think, to what you're saying, the point you're making, I think, is what's really at the essence of that is, I think football players, a lot of times we give them too much credit for knowing how good they are and why they're not as good as somebody else, or why they're not getting the results of somebody else. And what I mean by that is like, and Jimbo used to talk about this, it's not just about playing well, it's about knowing why you're playing well. It's not just about, and so, being a great athlete and it's about figuring out exactly why that succeeded, why that play worked, what did you do on that play, and then replicating that every time. And a lot of times they don't know. And I've got a story that's going to be up on the website today, talking about Jared Jackson and his tryout with the Rams he's got coming up.
The walk-on
wide receiver. And I was talking to somebody, a former NFL player who helped him in his I don't have to go in the whole story, but anyway,
don't say the names. We want people to click on the column.
We were talking about the difference between making it in the NFL and not making it in the NFL. And one of the things he was saying was, it's the line is so fine between the guys that get cut in camp and the guys that become Pro Bowlers. It really is much more fine than you would think. And it's maybe all the little things. It's the attention to detail. It's the technique on certain things. All those guys are great athletes. And then it's a matter of, okay, putting it together and then being able to apply what you've learned and intelligence. There's not, I guess the point is there's a lot of different variables that go into it. And I think a lot of times the players don't know why don't they perform at this level with this other guy? I don't think they always know. I don't think they have a clear understanding of how good they are compared to other people. I think we assume they do, but I don't think they do.
That's fair. I never thought about it that way. And I agree with that. What sort of made me think about is, I mean, obviously football is one of the sports that I feel has been insulated from not sabermetrics, analytics, or whatever the kids are calling it. Or not the kids, all you grown-ups are calling it these days. But, I wonder if a guy like Tavares McFadden's like, look at like Jalen, how many interceptions did Jalen Ramsey had, right? I mean, I had 8 last year. I had 8 when I was a sophomore. I'm good. I have that stuff on tape. I'll be fine. And then just like how humbling and jarring it is when that is not reciprocated. So
I mean, there's no doubt he thought he was a first-round pick. I mean, I'm not saying right before the draft, but at various points during his year leading up to the draft, he thought he was going to be a first-round pick, and he ends up not getting drafted at all. But even these other guys, I mean, it's at least I understood where he believed, he was an All-American. He got like some award of the best defensive back in the country from one of those, offshoot awards.
I erroneously said the Jim Thorpe Award.
Not the Jim Thorpe
Award. It's not that one,
but it's it's some other offshoot.
I'm going to find it right now. You carry on, friend.
But so he had at least some hardware to kind of back up his belief. But some of these other guys who are mad that they didn't get drafted, it's like, dude, I mean, you weren't starting. Like, if you weren't starting at Florida State, how mad could you be?
Jack Tatum.
The Jack Tatum Award.
There it is. I knew it was some grizzled, tough SOB.
Really just personifies Tavares.
Oh, exactly, right? Jack Tatum would be so stoked to see video of the Boston College game. Jack Tatum. Is Jack Tatum still alive? I should find that out. Even if he wasn't, would get out of his grave and walk to Chestnut Hill and snatch the trophy out of Tavares McFadden's grasp, which wouldn't be that difficult, obviously. Yes, Jack Tatum is no longer with us, 2010. Rest in peace, sweet prince.
I do like the fact that you find yourself in these rabbit holes during the show. Like you think of something and then we don't have to crack research.
I'm trying, Harry. I'm sticking to sports over here. I'm staying in my lane, man. I feel bad because we're having some pretty substantive football conversation, and poor Corey, when I'm in here, I'm just like, Corey, talk about something, Corey, please.
You don't need to prepare when you got Corey.
No, I'm just like, Corey, I'm going to ask you a question that's got 7 words, and the next 7 minutes I'm just going to hang out. Let it rip, big guy. So yeah, I mean, it's just, again, it's one of those mysteries that we're never going to get an answer on. There is no answer to, but that was one of the things that I don't think a lot of people maybe factored in, and I don't know how fair or unfair it is.
And one of the theories, for Travis Rudolph at the time, I don't know if I know you were paying attention from afar, but I don't know how close attention you were paying from afar, certainly in the offseason. But like Travis Rudolph, kind of the prevailing theory was he was worried he wasn't going to get a lot of balls because Naquan Murray, Auden Tate, some of those guys were kind of emerging, which really now looks silly.
Right, like Jerry Rice is here. Move along. Move along, Travis. We got Naquan Murray here.
That was one of the theories floating around out there. But, I just think, I think that guy, Travis Rudolph, to me, and I don't know him well. I mean, I covered him, but I remember interviewing him after the bowl game, his last game, and he was talking about how he said his parents his mom wanted him to come back to college, get his degree.
And his father was still alive at that point.
Yeah, at that point,
he?
yeah.
I mean, that's
he'd already decided to go when the whole tragedy happened. But I, it just seems like one of those guys that kind of came in thinking I'm going to be here 3 years, and even though that the production didn't maybe justify coming out, I think it just seemed like maybe he just decided when he got here, I'm going to be here for 3 years, and a lot of those guys have that mentality and don't know how to audible out of that. It's like they're so convinced that that's going to be their destiny.
I think that's the ultimate sort of admission of like failure too, is if you don't. And I think that's, it's if you don't go like, what's your problem? It's like, it's these days, like, if you're, I mean, maybe not these days because we're so much more open-minded about things, but I mean, I would imagine like 30 years ago, if you're not married by the time you're 20, like, why are you not married yet? What's your problem?
Or they used to, like, if a woman wasn't going to have a baby, why, where's my grandkid? Like the parents would.
So you're Mr. 5-star. You're man, you're going to be here for 4 years? Like, what's that all about? So I think that creates a sort of negative thing. But yeah, I was guilty of it. I remember when he like caught that touchdown against Louisville in 2014, that great comeback. I'm just like, man, it's going to be so awesome to know that there's going to be no drop off once Rashad Green leaves. We got this guy that's just going to keep catching, everything in his path and like just. Nah.
I don't know how we end up with a whole segment on Travis Rudolph, but do you have any explanation for why he had some of the games he had? Like he had like a couple like 200 like monster games.
He must have had a girl that came and visited him on those
weekends.
Like he had a special filly that would come
Syracuse,
see him.
I think.
He's a Syracuse killer.
Just throwing people down, like just get off me. And he was like a different dude. And in other games, he didn't get like a yard after catch on like 5 passes.
It was McGuire, I think, ultimately, right? McGuire came back gritty in that Houston game, and there was desperation mode, just throwing everything vertical. And Travis Rudolph started I remember leaving the bar. I watched the Peach Bowl and it was 11 o'clock in the morning, or however early that freaking game kicked off. I'm like, it's New Year's Eve. I'm like, I can't hang. I'm like, I've already drank this much, and it's only like 1 o'clock, and the game is over. But you looked at the stat line; he had like 9 catches or something, like 200 plus yards and 2 touchdowns.
A lot of it when it was over. Yeah,
you're like, jeez. And that's what it comes down to. He's the only receiver that's had more than 8 catches and 200 yards in more than one game in his career, and then all this kind of crazy stuff happens. Yeah, I don't know. I've always wondered about that because with NBA players, they go to certain cities and it's like it brings out the best in them, and you're like, I wonder if they just have just a special somebody. It's not just because it's Madison Square Garden or because it's Staples Center, but it's they got that's like their favorites in that city, and everything's at ease and everything works out really well when they get back to the hotel after the shoot around and stuff when they get there. Yeah, it's a bizarre sort of thing. Shout out to Travis Rudolph though, maybe get him on the show. Whole segment we got out of you, man. I appreciate it. Maybe I'll send a check in the mail to you, man. Let's wrap up the program. We'll be right back. He's Ira Maslon. It's 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee. It's Wake Up War Chant.
You're locked in to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
It's 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee. I'm Maslon Hudjavandi, Director of Digital Media for warchant.com, alongside our Managing Editor, Ira Schofel, filling in for Corey Clark. He's on the mend. He's got strep. Hopefully he's chock full of poisonous medicine that'll kill all of it, but in a good way or whatever, right? We're thinking about you, Corey. Hang tight, big guy. The show's brought to you by For the Table Hospitality, by the way, in case we haven't mentioned it. Great locations over in College Town. Go ahead, check them out. So I saw this, Ira, the other day. Florida released, I guess, some of the figures on some of these assistant coaches they've gone ahead and signed. Todd Grantham, $1.39 million.
Nice chunk of change.
Highest paid assistant coach in Florida history. $1.39 million. What does Mickey Andrews think every day he wakes up now?
And he missed the boat, man. He was born about 10 years too early.
Good grief, man. So
I don't think people realize how drastically that all changed, unless you've been paying close attention. Mm-hmm. But like when you were in college, which was how many years ago?
15?
Not quite, is it?
Yeah.
About there. I mean, in the mid-2000s, Mickey was making like, I'm not sure exactly, but I want to say about 250, maybe 300, maybe 300.
Yeah, I was always around
200s.
I thought like $250,000, like 250.
Yeah. And he was one of the top defensive coordinators in college football. And then I think at the end, he got bumped up. When Jimbo came in, Mickey got bumped up. Just kind of out of respect. I think Jimbo got hired, he was making like 500 and 500 to 600. And that was like a huge deal for Florida State to pay that much for a coordinator. And Mickey got bumped up close to it, probably like 350 or 400. So his last couple of years, he kind of got paid better, closer to what they are now. But yeah, man, it's just since that time, though, it has just gone nuts. I mean, Charles Kelly was the highest paid assistant, making like $850 or $860 for FSU. And I can't remember exactly what Harlan Barnett's getting, but I think it's around $1 million, I think.
If anything, for me, having somewhat of an affinity for Jimbo Fisher, at least this school is not responsible for paying any more money to Charles Kelly, right? So like he's getting paid, the family's taken care of, everything's okay, but at least it's not coming out of the wallets of hardworking Tallahasseans and Florida State fans and boosters who've poured everything they can into this program. That's a completely bizarre one. But in that vein, with Todd Grantham getting that sort of money, like let me ask you this then, Ira. Of all the assistant coaches that Willie Taggart has brought in, like which coach then in the similar vein of the first question I asked you in the first segment about which player are you just 110% sure is going to start day one? Like, of all these assistants that he's brought in, like, which one in your mind do you feel is going to be, I don't want to say the home run, but it's going to be the one guy that, like, we're going to look back on and be like, great hire by Willie. This guy's lived up and maybe even exceeded what the expectations were for him. Is Harlan Barnett maybe one? I mean, would he make the short list?
He's the chalk. I mean, he's the chalk. I mean, he's probably the most proven guy, and they are paying him about $1 million a year. And I think I'm impressed by him. I mean, I'm impressed by what we've seen out of him. I think the guy value per dollar. I think that the best hire
bang
on that
for
staff,
buck.
the best bang for your buck on that staff, I think may end up at the end of the day we may say David Kelly. And it's funny because he was a guy that a lot of us thought may not be on the field. We thought because what he did at Oregon and what he did at USF was more of an administrative operational role.
And Ron Dugans was going to come home.
Hey, there you go. And I think David Kelly's – I think he's valuable in a lot of ways. First of all, as a recruiter. He's been a great recruiter everywhere he's been. I think also as a position coach, he seems like the attention to detail is very good. I think there were questions about how well the receivers were coached under Lawrence Dawsey. I think David Kelly's going to do a better job at that part of it. And then I think the two more parts of it is one is the relationships with players. Willie Taggart calls him the Godfather. He's kind of got that, he's kind of got that older, he's just another father figure kind of guy.
I call him Unc. I want to call him Unc.
You do want to call him Unc.
Yeah. I mean, more the uncle than Godfather, but okay.
And then on top of that, he's like, again, I think he's kind of, I've said it before, kind of like maybe Willie Taggart's consigliere. I mean, he's like the guy. He's kind of his right hand man.
Keep the mob metaphors rolling, buddy.
Let's go. The Godfather.
Who's the capo? Definitely, it's got to be Raymond Woody, right? Raymond was a capo, right? He's the Paulie Walnuts.
But I think that I think he's going to end up being the most valuable, especially when you go by what you invested in him. Barnett's interesting, though. It's funny. I really wanted them to hire Terrell Buckley. I didn't hide that fact. I tried to kind of lobby it a little bit for Terrell Buckley. I like T-Buck a lot. I think the world of him as a person and also as a coach, and I really thought he'd be a good fit. And I was surprised that they didn't go down that road. Part of it was timing, but I think part of it was I think Willie knew that he was going to hire Harlan Barnett, or at some point, right in that time, he figured that out. And it seems clear to me that Harlan Barnett wants to coach all the DBs. I think that what T-Buck probably had in mind, and some other coaches, they've done in certain situations, is have one guy coach corners, one guy coach safeties, especially with his 10th assistant coach. But I think the fact that Harlan Barnett seemed to want it, at least my impression from watching them at practice, is he's very hands-on. They're his guys. Yep. Which is interesting because, again, that goes back to what I said before, that Bryant McFadden made the point that maybe Charles Kelly needed more help. The fact that Barnett's kind of choosing to kind of do it all by himself is interesting. And if they don't play well, that'll be one of the things we ask is, hey, dude, why do you have a full-time special teams coach and not somebody helping your defensive coordinator with the DBs? But the fact that he wants to do that, it seems to be his choice, I think says he's very confident in his ability, and if he comes through, then that'll be big.
I think again, that kind of in a roundabout way comes back to how we started the show off with. I think if the back end of this defense can find its teeth finally, and it's going to be on the either it's going to be on his hands, right? I mean it's going to be Harlan Barnett's got no excuses, don't blame anybody, whatever so it's all going to fall on him. So if that is the right hire, then I think everything kind of dominoes from there and will work itself out. Before we leave, we didn't talk about this at all earlier in the week when I was with Corey. Did you see that the New York Jets, have an off-season motto, like mantra?
They have just for the off-season?
I think.
Oh, is it do something?
Dude, it's all of it, I think. The Jets tweeted it out over the weekend. It's the back of Todd Bowles' sweater, and I don't think this is photoshopped on, it's like screen printed on. It says, blame nobody, expect nothing, do something. Well, what's Willie's? Willie's is blame nobody. Is it make no excuses or something? Make no excuses, blame nobody?
Blame no one. Because remember, it looks like it says blame Nooney on the sign. Remember? It looks like they're just missing an eye.
What?
The first time I saw it, I was like, blame Nooney. What did Nooney do?
Poor dude. Yes, that's bizarre, man. I noticed how that worked out. But, it looks like the vibes, the culture is spreading. It's spreading rapidly, even up north. So Crazy. We'll see how that all works out. Ira, thanks again for filling in today. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here under better circumstances next time. But, maybe
obviously.
Corey, hopefully, the fact Corey's on Twitter, I feel like he's making a comeback. Maybe he'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah. Good vibes for hashtag send good vibes to Coracle, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow with the Renegade Express. It's your questions, your comments, everything. You fuel the show. We'll catch up with you then. Thanks for tuning in.
The Sod Cemetery, Osceola and Renegade, and of course, the War Chant. These are great traditions known to all Seminole fans. If you are a card-carrying, garnet and gold-wearing Nole, don't you deserve a site that is truly dedicated to covering FSU sports? Warchant.com's staff has over 50 years of experience covering the Seminoles. Warchant.com is the only FSU outlet with a full-time recruiting analyst in Tallahassee. Plus, it's the only site with a full-time videographer and a daily podcast, 100% dedicated to FSU sports. Why act like Gators and settle for second best? Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.